You pay taxes, follow the rules, and assume the police will help. Big mistake. The American legal system is basically a customer service department for felons. From loopholes for killers to protections for thieves, here are 49 dumbest laws that shield the predator and leave you holding the bag. 1. If you break a car window to steal a $50 radio, the justice system treats you like a menace to society who needs to be locked away. But if you wear a bespoke suit and defraud investors of $500 million, congratulations, you have qualified for Club Fed, a minimum security resort where the guards are basically concierges and the biggest threat to your safety is a tennis elbow. The message is loud and clear. Do not be a petty thief. Be an ambitious one. The law treats white-collar crime less like a felony and more like an aggressive business strategy that just missed its quarterly projections. Apparently, if you steal enough money, it stops being a crime and starts being a complex financial instrument. 2. Can a snack cake turn a grown man into a murderer? According to the infamous Twinkie defense, the answer is a resounding maybe. During a high-profile murder trial, a defense team actually argued that the accused politician wasn't fully responsible for his actions because a sudden diet of sugary junk food had chemically unbalanced his brain. It sounds like the kind of excuse a toddler makes for drawing on the walls, but it worked well enough to downgrade a murder charge to manslaughter. Thanks to this precedent, defense attorneys can now try to turn the grocery aisle into a pharmacy, convincing juries that the defendant didn't have malice in his heart. He just had too much high-fructose corn syrup in his bloodstream. 3. There is a way to steal your neighbor's property that is completely legal. And you don't even need a ski mask, just a lawnmower and a lot of patience. It's called adverse possession, or as I call it, finders keepers for adults. If you start using someone else's land openly, maybe you build a shed or plant a vegetable garden, and the owner is too oblivious to stop you for a certain number of years, the court can literally hand you the deed. You are being rewarded for trespassing efficiently. It is the only crime in the world where the statute of limitations is actually the instruction manual for how to get away with it. 4. You might think the motto, "to protect and serve," is a binding contract, but the Supreme Court views it more as a catchy marketing slogan. In a terrifying ruling, the court decided that the police have no constitutional duty to protect you from harm, even if you have a restraining order against a violent stalker. You can call 911 until you lose your voice, but legally the officers can sit in their cruiser and finish their donuts while you fend for yourself. That piece of paper you fought so hard to get isn't a shield. It is just a suggestion that the police are free to ignore without consequence. 5. When a criminal knows they are guilty but wants to protect their offshore bank accounts, they pull a legal magic trick called the no contest plea. It is the judicial equivalent of shrugging your shoulders and saying, "I am not saying I did it, but I am fine with you punishing me." Why would anyone do this? Because unlike a standard guilty plea, a no contest plea usually cannot be used against them in a future civil lawsuit. It is a loophole designed for the wealthy to accept a plea bargain for less jail time while simultaneously blocking their victims from suing them for everything they are worth. It's not justice, it's asset management, with a prison sentence attached. 6. Statutory rape laws seem pretty black and white, but some states decided to introduce a shade of gray called Romeo and Juliet laws. On paper, these are meant to keep high school sweethearts with a small age gap from landing on a registry. In practice, however, slick defense lawyers use them to put a romantic filter on predatory behavior. They spin a narrative where a grown adult isn't a creep targeting a minor, but a star-crossed lover caught in a tragic romance. The law essentially asks the jury to ignore the birth dates and focus on the vibes, turning a serious felony into a debate about the maturity level of the victim. 7. For decades, the American legal system tolerated a defense strategy that is honestly hard to believe ever existed: the gay and trans panic defense. A murderer could stand in court and claim that discovering the victim was gay or transgender shocked them so deeply that they entered a state of temporary insanity and just had to kill them. It is a legal strategy that relies entirely on the jury sympathizing with the killer's bigotry. Essentially, the lawyer argues that the victim's mere existence was so offensive to the defendant's fragile ego that violence was the only logical reaction. It is victim blaming raised to the level of professional art. 8. If you want to see a magic trick, watch a defense attorney make a child's testimony disappear. Children are often the only witnesses to horrific crimes, but the court system allows lawyers to grill them until they don't know up from down. By the time a high-priced attorney is done twisting words and planting doubt, 12 adults in the jury box are convinced the kid just has an overactive imagination or is confusing real life with a cartoon. In this system, the accused gets the presumption of innocence, while the child victim gets a cross-examination that would make a grown man cry. It is a brutal process where the truth matters less than the ability to confuse a second grader. 9. Meet the mistake of fact defense, which is the legal system's fancy way of saying, "Oops, my bad." In a courtroom, a defendant can actually argue that they committed a crime simply because they were confused about the details. In the hands of a high-priced lawyer, "I didn't know" transforms from a lame excuse into a get-out-of-jail-free card. It turns a burglar into a disoriented shopper and a car thief into someone who just borrowed the wrong vehicle. It is effectively legal gaslighting, convincing a jury that the criminal wasn't malicious, just a very bewildered citizen who happened to be in your living room at 3 a.m. holding your jewelry box. 10. There is a law that protects corporations by using the calendar as a shield, and it is called the Statute of Repose. Here is how it works. A company can build a dangerously defective product, but if it doesn't blow up within a certain number of years, you lose the right to sue them. So, if that faulty water heater in your basement explodes and destroys your home one day after the deadline expires, that is just your tough luck. The law effectively tells you that corporate negligence has an expiration date, and after that, the shrapnel in your living room is technically your problem, not theirs. 11. If you need scientific proof that the sky is green, don't worry, you can just buy it. The American justice system is crawling with expert witnesses, professionals for hire, who will testify to almost anything if the check clears. These aren't impartial observers. They are part of the legal payroll, paid to muddy the waters on everything from DNA evidence to psychological evaluations. In an American courtroom, the truth often takes a back seat to whoever has the budget to hire the most convincing storyteller in a lab coat. It turns the trial into a battle of bank accounts rather than a search for justice. 12. In many states, turning 18 is like hitting a magical reset button on a life of crime. Juvenile records are often sealed, meaning a 17-year-old could be a violent menace, committing assaults, robberies, and grand theft auto. But the moment they blow out the candles on their 18th birthday, the law hands them a giant eraser. Their history vanishes, leaving a clean slate for job applications and background checks. Society gets to pretend that a violent sociopath is just a fresh-faced young adult entering the workforce, completely blind to the havoc they caused just a few months prior. 13. Apparently, there are 2 ways to kill someone, and one of them comes with a significant discount. If you plan a murder, you're looking at life in prison. But if you kill someone in a sudden heat of passion, the charge can be downgraded to manslaughter. The legal system literally has a soft spot for killers, provided they were really, really emotional when they pulled the trigger. It sends a strange message. If you are going to end a life, just make sure you throw a massive temper tantrum while you do it, and the judge might just go easy on you. 14. Imagine committing a crime in broad daylight, and the police simply cannot arrest you because you have the right kind of passport. This is diplomatic immunity. Under international agreements, foreign diplomats and their families can avoid prosecution for almost anything, from unpaid parking tickets to slavery and violent assaults. While you go to jail for a minor offense, a diplomat can claim immunity, hop on a plane, and fly home, leaving the victims with absolutely zero path to justice. It is a get-out-of-jail-free card recognized by the United Nations. 15. You know the line from the movies, "You have the right to remain silent." But what Hollywood doesn't show you is that the police officer is playing a high-stakes game of Simon Says. If a cop stumbles over the wording of the Miranda rights during a chaotic arrest, the entire case can implode. One slip of the tongue, one missed phrase, and a signed confession to murder can vanish into thin air. It is baffling that a violent criminal can get more legal protection from a grammatical error than you get from the police. Apparently, justice depends entirely on whether the officer memorized his lines that morning. 16. If you steal $50 from a cash register, the police will come in with handcuffs ready. But if your boss steals $50 from your paycheck by refusing to pay for overtime, the police will shrug and tell you it's a civil matter. Wage theft accounts for billions of dollars in stolen money every year, far more than all bank robberies combined. Yet the law treats it like a clerical error. It is a system where stealing from the rich is a felony, but stealing from the poor is just an aggressive business strategy. 17. There is a 50-square-mile strip of land in Idaho, inside Yellowstone National Park, known as the Zone of Death. Because of a bizarre constitutional loophole involving jury selection boundaries, legal scholars argue that you could technically commit murder there and walk away scot-free. Since the federal government cannot form a jury of residents from a place where nobody lives, the justice system effectively divides by zero. It is the only place in America where a map glitch might literally be a license to kill. 18. Imagine a SWAT team smashes down your door, terrifies your family, and ransacks your house, only to realize they read the address wrong. Who pays for the damage? Under the good faith exception, often nobody. As long as the police thought they were at the right house, the nightmare is technically on you. The law allows them to destroy your property and traumatize your children without consequence, as long as they made an honest mistake. Apparently, incompetence is a valid legal defense for the people carrying the battering rams. 19. Think of parole as a frequent flyer program for prisoners. The judge might bang the gavel and sentence a criminal to 20 years, but that number is usually just a friendly suggestion. With good behavior, which basically means not stabbing anyone in the cafeteria, that sentence gets slashed in half or worse. It is a system that looks the victim in the eye and lies to them about how long their attacker will be away. The time served becomes a negotiation between the prison and the criminal, and the person who actually got hurt is left completely out of the conversation. 20. Some laws create a system so fundamentally broken that it feels less like a courthouse and more like a casino where the house always wins. If you receive a completely unfair parking ticket, your instinct is to fight it. But then you do the math. Taking a day off work, paying for downtown parking, and covering court fees costs 3 times as much as the fine itself. The system is deliberately designed to make it financially smarter for you to plead guilty to something you didn't do. It is not justice. It is a government-sanctioned extortion racket with better architecture and a gavel. 21. What if you could erase a violent criminal history as easily as deleting a drunk text? That is the magic of expungement. In many states, even serious convictions can be scrubbed from the record after a few years of good behavior. It is a legal etch-a-sketch, where felonies vanish into thin air. Your new landlord or employer sees a background check that looks like a fairy tale of innocence, completely unaware that they are handing the keys to someone with a history of violence. The paper trail is gone, but the victims certainly haven't forgotten. 22. Have you ever wondered why a giant corporation can poison an entire town's water supply, yet the CEO gets a bonus instead of a prison cell? Meet the corporate veil, a legal invisibility cloak for the rich. It allows executives to shrug and say, "Don't look at me, the company did it." The corporation pays a fine, which is basically just a rounding error in their quarterly earnings. And the humans who actually made the decisions go back to playing golf. It is a system where a business entity is treated like a person until it's time to put on the handcuffs. 23. The dead man statute sounds like something from a pirate movie, but it is a very real, very convenient tool for con artists. In some states, this rule prevents you from testifying about any private conversation you had with a person who is now deceased. Here's the nightmare scenario. A scammer tricks an elderly relative into signing over their estate based on verbal promises. Once the relative dies, the family can't say a word in court about the lies the scammer told. The dead can't talk, and the law makes sure the living can't speak for them either. 24. The plain view doctrine was supposed to be simple common sense. If a cop sees illegal drugs on your dashboard, they can take them. But it has mutated into a license for roadside proctology exams. A routine traffic stop becomes an excuse for an officer to press their face against your glass and shine a high-powered flashlight into every dark crevice of your vehicle. Suddenly, a baggie half hidden under a seat isn't private property. It is a plain view discovery. It turns the Fourth Amendment into a suggestion that can be bypassed with a really bright flashlight and a little curiosity. 25. In the courtroom, there is a monster that eats the truth, and its name is hearsay. This rule is designed to keep rumors out of court, but it often ends up strangling reality. If a witness told their best friend about a crime before they vanished, that friend often cannot testify about what they heard. The jury sits there in blissful ignorance while the most damning evidence is thrown in the trash because it didn't come with a notary stamp. It is a system where a technicality speaks louder than the actual story. 26. Imagine surviving a brutal assault, only to find yourself sharing a cell block with criminals. This isn't a glitch, it's a feature. If a victim is too terrified to testify against their abuser, maybe because they fear retaliation, the justice system can charge them with contempt of court and throw them in jail to compel them to speak. The message is brutally clear. Help us catch the bad guy, or we will treat you like the bad guy. It is the state bullying the very person they are supposed to be protecting. 27. Welcome to the dystopian nightmare known as civil asset forfeiture. This legal loophole allows police to seize your cash, your car, or your house if they merely suspect it is connected to a crime. Here is the punchline. They don't even have to charge you with anything. Your property is guilty until proven innocent. You could be driving with cash to buy a used car, have it seized during a stop, and then have to spend thousands on a lawyer to prove that your own money belongs to you. It is essentially state-sponsored highway robbery with a badge. 28. Evidence in a trial is treated like a delicate souffle. If you look at it wrong, it collapses. This is the chain of custody. If a piece of evidence is mislabeled, left unsealed, or unaccounted for by a clerk for even 10 minutes, it is contaminated. A murder weapon covered in the killer's DNA stops being proof and becomes a piece of inadmissible trash. The jury never sees it, and a violent predator walks free, all because someone in the evidence locker forgot to sign a clipboard. 29. There is a legal strategy called the voluntary intoxication defense, which is exactly as stupid as it sounds. In certain cases, a defendant can argue that they were so incredibly drunk or high that they couldn't form the specific intent required to commit a serious crime. While it usually doesn't work for drunk driving, it can be used to downgrade charges in other violent acts. It is a bizarre twist of logic where your decision to get absolutely wasted becomes a mitigating excuse for the chaos you caused while you were blacked out. 30. We like to think every criminal gets their day in court, but in reality, the justice system is a discount superstore run by overworked prosecutors. Most cases end in a plea bargain. A prosecutor with a shaky case or a busy schedule might offer a murderer a deal to plead to manslaughter just to close the file. It is a transaction where justice gets marked down for a quick sale. The criminal gets a lighter sentence than they deserve, and the victim gets to watch the system value efficiency over truth. 31. Criminals have a secret weapon to keep their confessions safe: spousal privilege. In many courts, you can confess your darkest crimes to your husband or wife, and the law cannot force them to testify against you. It turns a marriage license into a legal gag order. You could be a mob boss washing blood off your hands, but as long as the only witness is your spouse, the prosecution hits a brick wall. It's the one time the government actually respects the sanctity of marriage, mostly to help people stay out of prison. 32. Sometimes a jury decides that the law itself is the problem. This is called jury nullification. The prosecutor can present a mountain of DNA evidence, a signed confession, and HD video of the crime, and the jury can still just say, nope. It is the one time a group of 12 random citizens gets to play emperor, ignoring the judge's instructions and acquitting a defendant simply because they feel like it. It is the ultimate wild card that turns a rigid legal trial into a game of emotional roulette. 33. When a corporation gets caught selling a product that harms thousands of people, they don't want a public trial. They want silence. So they offer victims a sealed settlement. The victims get a check to cover their medical bills, but they have to sign a legally binding gag order, promising never to speak about what happened. It isn't justice, it is hush money. This legal muzzle allows the company to keep the dangerous product on the shelves for the next unsuspecting victim, ensuring the cycle of profit and injury continues undisturbed. 34. So, the police break into your house without a warrant and find the stolen goods. By all rights, that evidence should be tossed out. But wait, here comes the inevitable discovery rule. The police can argue that even though they broke the rules, they would have found the evidence legally eventually. It is a legal mulligan, a cosmic do-over that tells cops they can bypass the Constitution as long as they can tell a convincing story about how they totally would have done it right if they had just waited a little longer. 35. In the twisted logic of the justice system, it is often safer to be a career criminal than a bystander. Enter the Witness Protection Program, the ultimate loyalty reward scheme for the mob. If a hitman agrees to testify against his boss, the government doesn't just forgive his sins. They give him a brand new identity, a house in the suburbs, and a monthly stipend, all funded by your tax dollars. Meanwhile, the families of his victims are left with nothing but grief and the bill for his fresh start. It is a system where the guy who pulled the trigger gets a taxpayer-funded retirement package, and you are the one paying for his groceries. 36. If a doctor operates on the wrong leg, they get sued. If a driver runs a red light, they get a ticket. But if a judge makes a catastrophic error that ruins a life, they are usually untouchable thanks to judicial immunity. This doctrine protects judges from being sued for their official acts, no matter how biased, corrupt, or blatantly stupid those decisions might be. They are the only employees in America who can be spectacularly bad at their job with zero liability. It is not a profession. It is a god complex with a pension plan attached. 37. The law has a notoriously blurry definition of consent, and defense attorneys love to play in the gray areas. In many assault cases, the absence of a clear, screaming no is twisted into a polite maybe. This legal gymnastics puts the victim on trial, forcing them to prove they fought back hard enough to satisfy a jury, while the accused gets to hide behind the ambiguity. It turns a traumatic violation into a contract dispute where the defense argues that silence was actually a signature. The burden of proof effectively becomes a shield for the predator. 38. In some states, you can beat a criminal charge just by writing a check. It's called civil compromise. If you commit a misdemeanor, like a hit and run or a simple assault, and you settle financially with the victim, the judge can dismiss the criminal case entirely. It is essentially a legal bribe that allows wealthy offenders to buy their way out of a criminal record. The message is clear. If you can afford to pay for the damage, the law doesn't care that you caused it in the first place. 39. The ultimate game over for justice is double jeopardy. The Fifth Amendment says that once a person has been acquitted of a crime, they cannot be tried for it again, no matter what happens. A killer could walk out of the courthouse, write a best-selling book detailing exactly how he committed the murder, and go on national TV to brag about it. The police can't touch him. The law decides that finality is more important than the truth, essentially telling the victim, "Sorry, we only get one shot at this." 40. In some jurisdictions, you can actually beat a drunk driving charge by claiming you weren't technically driving. If a cop finds you passed out drunk behind the wheel of a running car parked on the roadside, your high-priced lawyer can argue that nobody actually saw the vehicle moving. Unless the officer witnessed the tires rolling, the defense can claim you just went to your car to listen to the radio and accidentally fell asleep. It is a loophole so massive you don't just poke holes in the case, you drive a semi-truck right through it. 41. If you want to get away with a serious crime, sometimes all you need is a calendar and some patience. This is the statute of limitations. For many major offenses, including fraud and assault, there is a literal timer running. If the prosecutors don't charge you within that window, maybe they are overworked or maybe you hid well enough, you are home free forever. The law basically says that if you can play hide and seek with the justice system long enough, the government eventually gets bored and quits. You beat the clock, so you beat the rap. 42. Imagine the only witness to a murder is a parrot that can perfectly mimic the killer's voice and words. It sounds like a cartoon, but it has happened, and the legal system doesn't know what to do with it. In court, an animal cannot be sworn in to tell the truth, so its testimony is considered hearsay or just noise. The killer walks free because the one person who heard everything demands a cracker instead of a Bible. In this specific instance, justice really is blind, and apparently it is deaf to anything with feathers too. 43. Here is a riddle from the IRS. Why can't you deduct the gas for your commute to work, but a CEO can write off a private jet? The tax code allows corporations to expense aircraft, luxury vehicles, and business trips to tropical islands, treating them as necessary costs. Meanwhile, your daily drive in a rusty Honda is considered a personal choice. It is a system designed by the wealthy for the wealthy, effectively forcing the working class to subsidize the luxury travel of the people underpaying them. 44. A dangerous criminal can walk free because a police officer has bad handwriting. This is the extreme side of the exclusionary rule. If a cop gets a search warrant but misspells the street name or writes the wrong date, any evidence found during that search can be tossed out of court. A mountain of heroin, a signed confession, a murder weapon, all of it vanishes into legal thin air. It is a system where a simple clerical error is more powerful than catching a bad guy red-handed. Grammar literally protects the guilty. 45. A handshake deal is a great way to show you are an honest person, and a terrible way to protect your assets. The statute of frauds is an old law that requires certain contracts, like land sales, to be in writing to be enforceable. A con artist knows this. You don't. They can verbally agree to sell you a property, take your cash deposit, and then simply deny the deal ever happened. Because nothing was signed, the law takes their side. It is a centuries-old rule that has evolved into a modern scammer's best friend. 46. If you trade stocks using secret information, you go to federal prison. If a member of Congress does it, they call it a lucky guess. For years, politicians were essentially exempt from insider trading laws, using their knowledge of upcoming legislation to boost their portfolios. Even with newer acts like the Stock Act, enforcement is laughable and fines are pocket change. They aren't public servants. They are day traders with a security clearance, and the law treats their corruption like a job perk. 47. Imagine committing 5 different robberies and only going to jail for 1. This is the logic of concurrent sentences. A judge can decide that a criminal will serve multiple prison terms at the exact same time, rather than one after the other. It is basically a buy one, get 4 free discount on doing time. A predator with a laundry list of felonies gets to serve a single stretch, effectively erasing the punishment for all the other victims. It is efficiency for the prison system, but a slap in the face to justice. 48. There is a fancy Latin legal phrase, de minimis non curat lex, which means the law does not concern itself with trifles. It sounds reasonable until you realize it gives criminals a free pass for small-time offenses. A prosecutor might drop a case because the amount of drugs was too small, or the stolen item was too cheap to justify the paperwork. It is the law's official way of telling criminals, go ahead and steal, just don't be too ambitious about it. It is essentially a government-issued coupon for one free crime. 49. The Constitution guarantees you the right to an attorney, but it doesn't guarantee that attorney has slept in the last 48 hours. Public defenders are tragically overworked, often juggling hundreds of felony cases at once. They might have 5 minutes to read a file before arguing for a client's freedom. This creates a two-tiered justice system where being guilty with a million-dollar lawyer is often a safer bet than being innocent with a free one. In America, you get exactly as much justice as you can afford. The system is rigged to let monsters walk on technicalities. So here is a moral test for you. If you caught a violent criminal red-handed but knew a legal glitch would set him free tomorrow, would you plant evidence to make sure he goes to prison? I want your honest answer below. Like and subscribe if you prefer justice over the law.